Hey guys, Nebraska Farm Boy here, and today we're talking about how to tell if a piece of metal is good for knife making, okay? I've recently done some videos on knife making. I like to be able to take a piece of metal, just grind it down into the shape of a knife and not have to worry about heat treating or tempering or nothing. So I'm going to talk a little bit today about what I use for my knife steel and how I tell whether it's hard enough or not. Okay, first of all, the first way that you're going to know is only use steel, okay? Tin isn't going to work. Nothing other than steel is going to work out well for you, okay? If it's harder than steel, it's probably not going to cut very well. It's not going to work out very well for you. And if it's softer than steel, like most everything is, then it's just not going to hold an edge at all whatsoever. Okay, so now there's 3 grades of steel. Now this is very wide grades. They can be way from one end to the other in each of these grades. But to lump them into 3 big groups, it would be there's hard steel, there's medium steel, and there's soft steel, okay? I'm going to show you a couple of things that qualify into each of that fall into each of those categories. Alright guys, so here I've got a few of each of the categories. This would be soft steel, this is medium hard steel, and this is hard steel, okay? Starting with the hard steel, you can see we got a file here. We've got a diamond tipped concrete cutting saw, okay? So this is really hard stuff. You do not find this very often. It makes for great knives. They aren't going to have the ability to bend or to twist. They'll break instead of bending or twisting, but they are going to hold an edge for so long. These are really going to hold an edge for a really long time, but they aren't really the best for a beater knife, okay? Now, in the middle we have medium steel. Now, you're going to find a lot of things that are medium steel. This is a part of a plowshare. Here's a axle, car axle. This is a wood saw blade, which is going to be a little bit softer just because it's a wood saw blade and they aren't as hard as you would think. Now, spring steel is somewhere in between this medium steel stuff and this really hard steel stuff. It's a very good thing for making knives. It gives you a good balance between ability to bend and the ability to hold a good edge, okay? And then some tools fall into the category of either hard, well, as in medium hard, or they might be soft, so you kind of gotta be careful. And I'll explain another trick for knowing whether something is hard or whether it's soft in just a minute. Now over here we've got soft steel, and unfortunately most every flat piece of metal that you're going to find is probably going to be soft steel unless it's some sort of a blade, okay? This is like a piece off of a swather, a nail, a piece off of a combine. All of that is soft steel. Now I still use some of this stuff because I like it for making throwing stuff. Not so much like throwing stuff for self-defense or anything like that, but just, you know, stuff I want to play around with. If I am curious about how something will throw, like a shape of a knife or a throwing star, I'll generally make it out of soft steel first because this stuff works so much easier than a medium hard or a hard steel. Now the hard steel is really hard to work with. I would highly recommend you start out with something that was medium hard steel. But now let's talk for a little bit about my method for figuring out if steel is hard or not. Now, when it comes to carbon steel, and that's what most of your junk is going to be laying around, what makes that steel hard is the carbon content in that steel, okay? And when you grind that steel and heat that steel up, the carbon is going to start sparking. It's going to start burning off, okay? So it depends on how, you can tell how much carbon that steel has in it by the shape of the sparks, okay? So if the sparks are really straight, like if you are grinding this, say I ground this nail down, and the sparks would be really straight. They wouldn't bush out at all. They would just be straight out, okay? But let's say I was grinding this plowshare, or better yet, this saw blade. That's going to bush out. There's going to be nothing straight about it. It's going to be popping, crackling like fireworks, okay? So if you want to know the difference between the two sparks, the best thing you can do is just take a nail and take an old file and then just grind both of those on your bench grinder or your angle grinder, whichever you're using, and look at the difference in the sparks. You'll see a difference. One will be straight, one will be bushy, and then you'll be able to tell how much carbon content that piece of metal has in it by the shape of the sparks, okay? The more bushy they are, the more carbon content it has in it. And so it's going to hold an edge for longer, though it may not be as flexible, okay? The less sparks it's going to have, the less carbon it's going to have in it. It's going to be easier to work with, but it's not going to hold an edge as well. And just so you know, don't try to use soft steel if you want to make a knife that's going to hold an edge, because it won't work. I did that with my first knife. It turned out beautifully. It turned out absolutely beautifully, but it would not hold an edge whatsoever. It bent all over the place. I was so sad. But it is a cool way if you wanted to just test out a shape of a knife, okay? So that's what I've got for you guys today. That's how I tell and decide on what kind of steel I'm going to use for a knife, because you don't want to get through making a knife only to find out it doesn't have a good edge. Without any further ado, this is Nebraska Farm Boy, and that's your quick tip for you.